Okay, hello and welcome. This is going to be a quick tutorial on how to go about sharing your BattleScribe data files as a data repository. Um, Now, a data repository is simply a folder shared publicly on the internet that contains the data files themselves, as well as a special index file. The index file tells BattleScribe which data files are actually in the repository, and it also tells it which revisions or versions those files are at. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be hosting my repository on Dropbox in the public folder. Now, a quick note about Dropbox. You can see here that I've got a folder called public with a little tiny globe icon next to it. It's very important that if you're using Dropbox that you store your repository somewhere inside this public folder. Now, in some cases, you'll find this public folder doesn't actually exist, but it's very easy to go ahead and have one set up. In the Dropbox help documentation, there's actually a link somewhere down here to create your public folder. Now I'll include a link to this help documentation in the description below in case you need it. But you just click on there and it will go ahead and create your public folder for you. Now, if we open up BattleScribe and we go to Manage Data, you'll see it'll tell you down here where your data files are currently stored. So let's have a look inside that folder and have a look and see what we've got. BattleScribe. You'll see in the Game Systems folder I've been working on a file for the incredibly popular game Warsword 5000, and I've created a catalogue for my favourite army, the Space Knights. You'll also notice that these files have got a .cat and .gst file extension. Now these are uncompressed data files, and it's the default format that the editors save their files in. They are a little bigger than the compressed versions, but we'll get to that later. Okay. So from Manage Data and here in BattleScribe, if I click on Share My Data, we'll get the data indexer, and this is the tool that you use to create your repository. So first thing, we'll give it a name. We're going to leave this URL field blank for the moment. I'll come back to that in a moment. We're going to choose Create a Repository from My Data Files. This means the indexer will look inside our local folder here for files to use. If your data files are elsewhere, you could use this Create a Repository from an existing folder option if you want, but it's much easier to do it this way. I'm going to choose to use all of my data files to create the repository. It's possible to select individual files if you wanted to just use a few of them, but for now we're just going to use all of them. We're going to choose Write Repository to Separate Files. This will create a folder containing our repository for us. It's also possible to create a repository using a single file, but that's something I'll come back to later. For now, we want to create a repository as separate files. So we need to choose a place to create our repository, and what we're going to do is go to my Dropbox folder, public, and I'm going to create a folder for my repository. BattleScribe repository. Okay. Once we've done that, all I need to do is click Create Repository, and our repository is made. Let's go and have a look and see what that's done for us. Go back to my Dropbox folder, public, BattleScribe repository, and you'll see there it's created a bunch of files. This is your repository. You'll see the index.bsi, that's the specific the special index file we spoke about earlier. There's also an index.xml. Now this is the same as the index file, except it's there to support older versions of BattleScribe where people haven't upgraded to the latest version. You don't really need to worry much about it, but do keep it inside your repository just in case people with older versions want to use it. You'll also notice that our game system Warsword 5000 now has a .gstz file extension, and our catalog file has a catz file extension. Now this shows that the indexer has read your data file, confirmed that it's all in one piece and working okay, and then has compressed it down to the catz file to make it smaller so that it's easier for people to download from your repository. So that's all looking great. Okay, now what I'm going to do is right click on my index and copy public link, go back to data indexer, and I'm going to paste that link into the URL field here. And I know this seems a little weird, but I'm going to click create repository to rebuild my repository with that URL in it. This is just to make sure that this URL is correct. The URL field here is important, especially for iPhone and other iOS device users. Due to the way that iOS applications share data amongst themselves, it's important that this URL is in here and correct for it to work for iPhone users. Obviously, if you were to store your repository elsewhere, on your own website, for example, it's important that this URL points to the location that your index.bsi file sits on. Okay, so let's just test that this is all working okay. I'm going to go back to my local BattleScribe directory here, and I'm going to delete my game system and catalog folders. Done there. Now I'm going to paste in the URL to my index.bsi, add that, click update data, and what we should see is BattleScribe has downloaded our GST file and catalog file from the repository and put them in the right places. So that's all looking good. So this has shown that the repository is correctly set up and it's all working fine. So when you want to go ahead and share that with other people, you can just give them the link to your BSI file here, the URL there, and they can add that to BattleScribe and download your data. Good stuff. Okay, so one thing to bear in mind, as I said earlier, the index file contains the revision numbers of the data files that are inside the repository. Now, this is important because BattleScribe will only download new files from a repository when it updates. So that's to say, it will only download files that have a greater revision number than the file it already has. So what this means is it's important, if I open Catalog Editor and I load my Space Knights catalog here, let's say that this speeder down here has an incorrect points cost and it's actually 30. So we want to update that and we want to correct it, and we want to put that into our repository. Now, since we've just made a change there, what we really need to do is go in here and update our revision number. This will tell BattleScribe that this particular file is actually newer, and therefore anybody updating their data from our repository will download this file. So we'll save that. Once we've done that, updated our file, increased the revision number, we need to go back to Manage Data, Share My Data, and create the repository again. Now, it's important to do this because recreating the repository will make sure that your up-to-date file is contained in there, and it will also make sure that the index file has the correct revision number in it as well. So every time you update a catalog or game system file, make sure you increase the revision number save it, and recreate your repository. This will make sure that anybody subscribing to your repository will get the updated files. Okay. One final thing. As I said earlier, it's possible to write a repository to a single file. I'll just quickly show you what that does. I'll just put that onto my desktop, give it a name, and create repository. And what this does is, rather than creating a folder with all your data files in, it creates a single zip file which contains all of that stuff. So if I open that with a zip tool, you can see inside it's got the same structure as the repository. Now this is just useful because you could, for example, attach this to an email and send it to somebody, put it on a USB stick, that kind of thing. So it's just kind of handy for passing around to people. And I think that's about it. If you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop me a line. You can get me on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, the forums, whatever's your poison. They're all linked to from the BattleScribe homepage. I hope that's been useful, and thank you very much for watching.